Hello and welcome to a tutorial on how to make a path grid. Today I thought I would make a supplementary tutorial to my wiki page that I made on the subject by pathing an exterior. Specifically, we are going to be looking at Hlan Oek here, which I chose because it has a very diverse set of things to path here and circumstances. So this isn't going to be strictly, every moment packed with something to do, but I thought I would just go through and path this place. I've already actually had to do it over in the mod itself, but every time you, well, that one I edited somebody else's, but this time I'm going to make it from scratch. And we're going to see sort of just the general why do I do things, what kind of reasons for doing specific, things to avoid, stuff like that. So let's get into it. First of all, we should have borders on whenever you're doing external work, or else you're not going to be having fun when you don't know why your path grid can't go there. This is actually something I should start out talking about. So first, when we start the path grid here, if you go outside the path grid and you click here, if we press C to go to where our current node is, you can see that it is now in the corner, and you should get rid of that. That happens if you try and place outside of the border of the current cell. And something that often happens, if you go and you check the corner of a cell that has a path in it, you might find random nodes just floating in the air. Look, there's actually some right there. Oh, and there's a bunch of them. Okay. Now, there's really nowhere you should specifically start when you make these paths. It's just nice to pick a spot that's nice and central, maybe. And then from there you can just kind of grow based on the need of where you, the need basically of the settlement, of the location, really. Because it's a city, we want to have guards walking everywhere, and guards will follow paths very exactly, at least in vanilla. Which is very important for keeping in mind when you're making these streets and narrow roads, because of course in vanilla NPCs will just run into each other, and so you just always want to keep that in mind when you're moving stuff around. So let's just move over here. Probably don't need to worry about anybody actually walking over here. If the end player goes over here to hide or something, people can navigate just fine. It's coming in here. We want to be able to make sure that that they will come closer to here. If we wanted to be very strict about this, you could put one right here to make sure that if somebody goes over here, the NPCs won't go there. But that's a very unlikely situation because of how the distance of nodes from anywhere that they would be following over there is unlikely to be a shorter path through here than it would be to go over to this one over here. So that's always something to keep in mind, because fundamentally what you're doing when you're making these paths is, when they're not following anybody in particular, and the NPCs are just wandering, they will just follow the paths, and they'll turn around and stop when they reach these nodes. So sometimes it can be valuable to have more nodes so that NPCs will stop or turn around and rethink what they're doing at a shorter distance. It's optional, honestly. And here, this big stair, this is an example of where, if you look at the tutorial, you do not need to have nodes covering every part of this. especially because this is not a high traffic area. You can just go up the center. If this was a high traffic area where you're not going to have a lot of NPCs going back and forth, it might then be valuable to have 2 lanes that crisscross their connections, like we'll see later on. But for this one, probably not important. Here, we have a bit of an interesting situation because this specific area has this tricky plant box that can be the NPCs could easily get stuck on. So if we wanted to make sure that that doesn't ever happen, you could do this. Again, not strictly required, but it might be a good idea. Guards would, as long as you make sure that they don't get stuck on this planter, that'll be the ultimate test later on. Always remember that if the path doesn't work, that is the primary thing that a path should do. If it doesn't work with the NPCs, it doesn't work with the creatures, then it's not a good path. It doesn't matter how nice it looks. The testing is always the ultimate verification of its value. However, there's also a lot to be said about making a path that is easy for developers to understand. If I come in and I'm looking at a path grid and I'm just confused about what's going on, that's also not good. Because if you need to debug it or you have to change it later, it'll be very confusing. And also for the author themselves, you'd think you'd lose track of what you're doing. Now these nodes in the center of the stairs are not always strictly required. The reason I do them usually is it's a good habit because again, NPCs will go for the closest node. In this case, there is no node on the other side. Like there's nowhere to walk over here on these sides. You know, you could get rid of this. You could keep it. It doesn't really matter. Again, if you don't want NPCs stopping in the middle, it might be a good idea. But this also is getting pretty far, and you generally don't want nodes to be connected by very far distances because sometimes NPCs will ignore paths that have lots of distance between them. Again, that comes down to testing. This area, we don't really need to worry about anybody going over here. It's not a reasonable thing you want guards to be doing. That's one of the balances you have to make when you're making settlements like these with guards, is that you don't want people doing things that look really stupid if you can help it. But of course, you also want you know, you want people to the NPCs to react in a way that doesn't seem incredibly stupid. If, for instance, you assault a guard, it's more fun if the guard will actually follow you around and stuff like this. But in this specific case, we'll have to test it. But I doubt the guard would not go around this on its own. This specific layout, common for the Hlan houses, is probably a few others. It doesn't usually strictly require a path, but it can be nice because depending on the surrounding area, it's possible that they will get stuck trying to get up to where you are. Okay, now we got a market area. This is where we're starting to get where you need to be able to have more complex crisscrossing and stuff like that. Need to line it up so that these primary paths can go down the stairs on a reasonably straight trajectory. Yeah, because they don't need to go in between these stalls. There's nobody actually walking in and out of these. Yeah, I don't know if the NPCs are even capable of leaving. So that's not important in this case. If they are, maybe you could test. It's always a good thing to test. Can the NPCs go in and out of this place? But this looks very suspect. I mean, maybe they could, but you also probably wouldn't want anybody doing this. Again, that comes down to testing. I will do. We will test stuff like that in a bit. This isn't strictly necessary, but it can be nice to have some variety in moving around a wider space like this. Now, this is just a helpful general junction in a way. You don't, because you could simply like do this and then not have this, but the problem when you don't do that, aside from the fact that there's an NPC here, you could, but it just doesn't look as nice. That's just maybe a me thing, but that's how I prefer to handle these sorts of junctions. I think this guy wanders, so it doesn't actually matter, but here's another case of just adding, because this is a settlement, it's kind of nice that people will actually wander around. And I suppose you want to account for being able to pass in this general direction of this area over back here. But again, not strictly required if this was something less settlement-y. Same with this area back here. This should be good enough most days, and it'll prevent, I mean, you could add something here, but that just, I guess, it's up to you. There. Doesn't have to look geometrically pleasing, but stay far enough from the circle so that you avoid any hitbox stuff that's going on. And then we'll have to test that again, but I doubt that would cause any problems. Moving down into here, we want to just gotta continue doing triangles. Triangles are always very good to do. Just triangles like these cross sections, you know, they cover the area well, and they're pleasing to look at. They get the job done. Okay, here's an interesting set of problems. We have a gate going outside the settlement. Now, strictly just talking about somebody coming from the inside and somebody following you outside, you wouldn't need any more than this. You wouldn't need more than this getting to there because there's no obstacles, not really anyway. There's these rocks. But you should also consider creatures coming from the outside as well is another thing to consider, as well as any followers you might have. And so I like to also put a node or two outside so that there's a point that they know that they can come to here, because they'll look for the closest node. So when they're coming in, instead of going like, I don't know if you, I think the original path of this spot had a node kind of like right here. And the problem with that is that if a creature is coming in like over here, they'll be just kind of wandering around and might get stuck on stuff. They'll get stuck on the wall. They just won't know how to go through the gate. because they don't have that kind of path gridding without the path grid. That's why you make them. They'll go around obstacles, but they'll get stuck on a lot of them. So, and we don't really need anything over here. If you could add something like this, if you really wanted to. Again, not strictly necessary, and it depends on the context, whether it makes any sense for anybody to be just randomly walking over there. Here we have a set of stairs. Don't always need to have nodes going upstairs. Especially this one has a very narrow area. It might not necessarily be necessary, but because it has like underneath area where you can walk, and you're likely to walk, that can cause issues if somebody's like on this and is looking for you. I mean, again, it all sort of can be hit or miss depending on the circumstance. So it's always worth the test. That's the #1 rule. But in this specific circumstance, I would prefer to put one here. Just so that it was there. And the other thing to keep in mind is that this will come up later, more with later stairs. But note how this node, how close this node is to in a 3D space to everything around it. Because NPCs again will go for the closest node when they're looking for how to get somewhere. So hypothetically, if there was a guard like right below this node right now, or even like right over here, this couldn't actually happen, but it will go through that for that node, even though it's really stupid to do so. And so, when you're making these spaces, you wanna make sure that there are nodes closer in 3D space, not 2D space, not from the top necessarily, but like this. And also, they can interfere with going up the stairs as well. If it's a big enough stair, this can happen where they'll get stuck in the middle, trying to go over here. It sounds really stupid, and it is, but it's something to keep in mind. Classic square here. This is the sort of formation you should be making a lot in streets. Oh, we went outside the bounds of this cell. I didn't notice. All right, when you get to the edge of a cell like this, you can just kind of go right up next to it if you want. NPCs will not choose paths over a cell line, I believe. They can wander over them, and they can follow you over cell lines just fine. But when it just comes to them picking up a path on a node grid, Pathgrid, like for wandering guards, I believe this is where the limit of where they'll go. Just keep in mind. And so when they're pathing to you to find you in a different cell, they would go to where the last closest node is for you that you were following on, and then from there, once they get there, they would then look for the other nodes in the other cell. I believe that's how it works. Somebody else could correct me. Okay. Nobody needs anything on the ship. Oh, there's a rooftop here. Now these, depending on how complex they are, you might not need a balcony one. Like this balcony does not need any pathing on it because there's no obstacles. There's nowhere to go. And unless you have a mod for, I believe, OpenMW, NPCs cannot path through other cells, so they can't go through this door to go to anything else. So there's no reason to worry about that. But this one is big enough that there's obstacles, there's stuff to get to, so it is worth putting something here. It doesn't have to be too complicated, but just enough to follow around the crane. That should be good. Now I've done a bunch, and I haven't remembered to click save, but you always want to remember to do that, because you don't want to get to the end of your Pathgrid thing and have never saved. Okay. Let's continue making nice triangles. At a reasonable density. It doesn't have to be too fancy. But I want to have routes for getting in here. This is a pretty. I don't know about this pathway. I don't think I would make it like this, but that'll work. Okay, this area is actually pretty interesting. There's like a bridge over the top here. Again, we can come to the edge if we want and place a node there. I don't know whether that's strictly required. Again, like I said, they'd probably go to this closest one, but sometimes it can be valuable to make sure that the closest node is, closest. That's the only reason you might think to put it right up against the line. Or maybe this back here, where again you could do this, but because this gets cut in half, the navigation of this area would probably not be much improved by adding nodes here. But you could do that. Just make sure that to avoid that stool. We didn't connect this. Okay. Gotta watch out for this cart. Oh, we gotta line up with this street here. Okay. Now, gotta make sure they. Oh, there's like a pole sticking out here. I gotta make sure to avoid that. Don't be too close to obstacles. There's no need to hug the walls or other statics. Yeah. You'll just be inviting disaster by getting NPCs stuck. Think of it like bridge supports with these triangles. All right. Now we can just finish up this other area, I suppose. Keep the double lane going here. Although there isn't much space for it. Maybe this isn't a good idea in this case. I should note that I might have mentioned this before, but trying to place a node on an NPC will also result in random floating nodes way off in the void. So just always, if you try and place a node and nothing appears, press C to center on what you've placed, because it's very likely that you've accidentally placed it way off somewhere. Alright, and now I come to the edge here as well, and that's probably good. Alright, and we come down here. So this looks like we've covered everything in this cell, pretty much. Pending testing, of course. But, yeah. This next cell, though, has some interesting particularities, like this area, for instance. In the old map I was looking at, or the old path grid for this place, there was a path grid here, but this is not necessary. There's nowhere here that you can get stuck on that matters where you need to, like, there's no navigation that needs to be done here. It's a small box. Nothing can be navigated to. Oh no, they got stuck on the table. Oh no. They're just gonna walk around. It's not terribly important. If this is an expected combat encounter, though, maybe you want like an archer to come around the corner, just in case. Like, you could do that. That's a situation where that might be valuable. These guys don't look like they have that capability. But maybe they do. I don't know. This guy does, though. So this guy on the top. But again, he doesn't need a path to try and go as close as possible to you and aim. The only reason there might be any concern here is because of this table. But I mean, they would probably be able to walk around this table just fine. Again, testing. And it helps if you are the one who built this place and know, especially if you place the NPCs and you know what's supposed to happen here. Now, I don't remember exactly where the nodes are. It's not super important. The connections will be made automatically. It's just, again, so that it looks more smooth, is that they don't just like jitter around to stupid spaces that don't make any sense. If it's nice if they're cleaner and continuous, but you can't do it perfectly in all cases. In all cases. Okay. This specific area, we could add a path to this area. This does not currently have one. If you really wanted to. Unlike the other side of the town, there isn't really a lot of area around the edge that you would get stuck on, that you would reasonably walking on. Like if they come from over here, that's something else. Placing a node right over here is probably not going to help if somebody's stuck behind these rocks. It's just it's not the same situation. If it were me, I might add one, and then one going around the side, depending on if you cared about anybody going over there, but yeah, it's not strictly necessary in this case, so it doesn't actually have one. Oh. Must have accidentally clicked on a creature behind here. Okay. This person, I'm pretty sure, is static, or rather, they don't wander. So you want to make sure that the path goes around them, because obviously NPCs that won't move will not get out of the way for other NPCs. This is a tricky little gap. I would not put that rock there, but that should be fine. Okay. I want to provide a path through there. And then this boat doesn't need anything, so maybe make sure that this is a more straight path. Okay, now we need to go up the stairs. That should work. Nope. Okay. This one does not have anywhere to go. But we want people to remain on the sidewalk, like proper citizens. Okay. Let's thread this needle too. Clean that up. And then, yeah, we can have double-sided everything here. Although, is this, yeah, this, okay, this is tall enough. Just want to make sure that the awning and stuff like that will not stop NPCs. This would be a case where if we had stuff on the roof, it'd be worth keeping in mind the distance between them to make sure that the nodes wouldn't cause pathing issues to try and run to the closest one. In this case, we're not having to worry about that. Although, I suppose in this case, I'll just do this for the sake of making sure that just in case there was some purpose to this, you could add something. Because right now, if this guy, let's say you shoot this guy from over here, what he's likely to do is just run endlessly into the wall. Now, he probably can't actually do anything, or she. I don't know. But this sort of layout will at least ensure that there's a node closer to them that they can go to navigate to where they might want to go to better angle themselves. But again, if this person does not have a ranged attack, this is completely pointless. Okay, this central market area is a fun part. Now we want to first, let's just make a circle around it. We got to be able to go down here, but we also want to go up these stairs first. So you want to have a more or less equal distance between these two nodes, just to avoid issues. just trying to make sure that people walk in a reasonable way on this sidewalk-ish dock, whatever you call it, area. That is an NPC marker, so maybe that will be maybe those people will be stationary. So maybe you might want to. It's possible that we want to be able to walk around them. So we could do something like that, maybe. Alternatively, go around them the other way. And now we remember that there's a node in the center here to meet up with. And do this. This is just kind of nice to be able to make sure that nobody will get stuck in here. But I mean, there's very rarely going to be a case where you'd have to worry about that, because I mean, if somebody's chasing you, they can reach. This is an area you have to keep in mind. If you're worried about combat, NPCs will be able to reach this distance with a melee weapon, especially a spear. So they won't have to actually be like following right behind you in this sort of very small obstacle. And of course, if they have magic or something, it won't even matter at all. Is this basket going to cause any trouble? Probably not. Again, something to test. And we'll go over that in a moment, how to test properly. Alright, so that should meet up with the node that's over here. So now we have a path that goes around it, and we got to look at. Oh, we should connect these. Now we got to look at, okay, where should we reasonably expect people to walk through it? Nope, don't want that. We'll take some finagling of where you place your nodes on the outside. This guard is going to wander, so we don't have to worry about them. This guy looks like a shopkeeper, though. He's probably just going to stay there. So notice right here that you can actually select nodes through buildings, statics and other things. So if you know the node is there, there's nothing to stop you from clicking on it, even through terrain and stuff like that. Also, it can be valuable sometimes if you're looking for, oh no, where did I, are there any nodes that I'm not accounting for? If you go underground, often you'll be able to better see sometimes, especially if there's like nodes going into buildings, you'll be able to notice that much easier. And it can be useful sometimes. I've especially found it useful when I'm going over older claims that have been redone. So if somebody like redoes a city, sometimes what'll happen, well, often in my experience, well, look, there's a node just right here. See what I'm talking about? You'll find stuff that's underground that you didn't notice, or inside a building. That's very important to try and catch, because it will mess up NPC movement. How do we want to do this one? That could work. It's just constructing an elaborate spider web here. Now, something to keep in mind when you're building stuff like this is, where do I need people to be able to navigate around? Again, just like I was talking about before with this area, you don't necessarily need to go into all the detail here. The reason I would consider it in this case is that there's a bunch of poles in the way, and that could be easily depending on the geometry, NPCs can easily get stuck on that sort of thing. Also, these benches, these are things that can be a nuisance. So it's just worth thinking about at the very least. And it doesn't really hurt to add a path here, as long as, oh, this might be too far over. Yeah, as long as you don't get stuck on anything new because of it. Should be good. We'll have to test it. Where else? Do we have everything? Oh, we're missing this spot. Okay, that should be everything on this side of the river. Got to remember this side too. Now this ship. These can be troublesome. The plank can be something that you can get stuck on. Going up the plank can sometimes be a trouble, but depending on how they're placed, they should be, if they're built well, they should be something you can walk up with NPCs. But again, the need of the space is important to think about. Like, are there NPCs still be walking around on here? Can I expect the player to be chased here? Trying to get NPCs to go up here is just not necessary, honestly. I mean, you could do it, but that'd probably be sufficient to do as well as the AI was going to do. The same with like something like that. Okay, we're almost done. Nice big triangle for this open area. I don't know if we want it to be this big, but this will probably work. This has a roof you can access, though. This is valuable to have a path to. Especially because this guy probably... Nah, he's got a sword. Because there's often cases where you'll have somebody capable of attacking. This is also a place where you could easily fall into the trap. Let's just say that you have a node here. If you didn't have a node in the center here, that would cause problems. But we don't actually need a node right there to navigate to this spot. If you're on the edge and you're right here, they should try and go along this node. No, they'll either go here and then find you here, or they'll go over here. In fact, probably don't even need this. Probably could do this if you really wanted to, but I think it looks nicer if you do this. And I'm putting it over here again to make sure that it's sort of equal distance from these ones, to prevent the situation where the NPC might be right here and then be like, there's a closer node here. Which, again, bit of a nitpicky thing, unlikely to happen in this situation because of these stairs being way off in the, on the edge. But if this was a house, smaller house, or some sort of dungeon, again, that's a situation that can come up a lot. Here we have again, making sure that the building, the nodes of the building are not going to interfere with these paths, and vice versa. Sometimes, if you are doing something like this where there's terrain or statics that's in the way, it can sometimes be helpful to lift them. Hold Z and just move them like a static. That can be valuable just for visualization of the paths, because it doesn't actually matter. It doesn't matter their exact height. What matters is the node connections and their 3D space. So the closest node to this spot is the important thing. If it's floating a little bit above the ground, it doesn't really matter. Trying to make sure this is kind of straight. Again, sometimes it could be valuable to do this, just so that when you're looking at it, you're like, oh yeah, that's connected. Although in this case, we have to put this in the center if we want somebody to be able to go up here. Okay, is that everything? I think so. Oh, there's an area here. Very simple. There isn't even any NPCs here, so the only way you'd have anybody coming here is if there's a follower. So, still valuable to have. Okay, we're just going to ignore anywhere outside the city right now that maybe you would want to add something there, but yeah, I don't think we need to worry about that. In fact, I don't even know if maybe they could walk up that. But if that's the case, there's really nowhere to go here except over here, so I wouldn't worry about that. This is not an area you're meant to be walking around much, I don't think. Not getting NPCs to follow you. I mean, you could, but this boat's right on the edge of a cell. So trying to get people to follow around this would already be painful. Again, play by ear, depending on what the need of of the spaces, I suppose. Okay. Now, how do we test this? How do we make sure that this is working? I highly recommend, to save yourself some time, using this ESP, Character Templates 2. This is on the TR website. There's other things that do, oh, whoops. There's other things that do pretty much the same thing. But what this is valuable for is that it saves you the time of when you're testing, when you're starting up the game. You don't have to use the console commands to give yourself speed and stats to do that. Ooh. All right, let's choose a spot to start. And here you see there's a list of classes. The Thief is very valuable for testing this stuff because it gives you lots of acrobatics and agility and speed. Yeah, speed of 100. This is very valuable. So next thing you want to do is God mode, but then you want to do toggle Pathgrid. This then you will see where the path grids are and how everybody's following them. Yeah, so you see they don't necessarily stop like exactly on the nodes, but they come to more or less where they are and walk along them. And so something to do at a very basic level, just walk around and see what happens with the NPCs walking around. Do they get stuck places? Do they get stuck on each other a lot? Before you go around hitting anybody. And then just like also check the cell boundaries. You know, who's wandering around, how's it going? And how does it look in game? Okay. Not seeing any very obvious problems, although what in the world are you doing? Oh. Don't know what happened to you. You are a... I don't know how you would have gotten there. Although, actually, you know what the problem is? Ignore that. That's because I have a bad... I have vanilla meshes. That's the problem. There's a mesh problem with this stair. That doesn't exist if you have the basic fix mods that everybody's recommended to use. Okay. Oh, and there's a path grid here. Okay, never mind. I was wrong. This is overly elaborate, but it works. This is definitely not what I would do. This can work as a bit of a like example of, you know, you have these super high density, high detail things that it just isn't necessary. If you go over and you look at what I've done, yeah, I do have some density here, but you know, around these edges of things, you don't actually need all that much. Okay. Step 2. Punch people. Kill people. This person, I mean, I can't even walk in here. I'm not even up to... Yeah. I mean, you could just barely make a path through here. Not worth it. Maybe an OpenMW would work better, but this is the vanilla engine. And that's the base compatibility that we're aiming for. Okay. But we are in God mode, and then if you just go around and hit somebody, you could get people to follow you, and it's good if you, especially if you could have like a crowd, and you can walk through to make sure that people will find where you are. You know, this is a basic example here. This guard found where I was. There we go. If I walk to the other side, oh, I got stuck. But, you know, well, they find me, and they do. So sometimes people, the NPCs, will just act stupid. You can't help that, but you can always mitigate it with the Pathgrids. That's the point. See, they lost sight of me. That's not something you can help. That's just... It's just how the engine works. And you just want to walk around stuff like this to make sure they just don't get stuck on anything. And that they can get to wherever you are. Let's try this bridge here. Will they go up the bridge? Yep. Okay. Just curious what happens here. Might have lost them. Yeah, that's what I thought. So you might want to add something here. Just to make sure that now it's not necessary, but you know, right, like look right there. They managed to do it well enough. But let's see. Oh, are they stuck somewhere? Can you get over here? Yeah, see, that works fine. Try going up into the ship. Yeah, see? Oh, okay. That's not the fault of the Pathgrid, that's just the geometry. What is going on? People are jumping everywhere. Anyway, as you can see, they can do it, but sometimes they just, I don't know what's going on. This guy's stuck on the edge. It just needs to work most of the time, or you're generally reliable. If you're actually making a claim, it's always a good idea to try and optimize it. You know, if it works sometimes and not others, you might want to figure out why and maybe lessen that. But it's not. It's this is just a quick example. I'm not going to be sitting here refining it, but I think this is pretty serviceable. Let's see, did I have anything else I need to talk about? Okay, well, just in closing, some things I could note. Just again, if you, I already mentioned the thing where if you accidentally click outside this you place a node outside the cell, you can very easily just get rid of stuff that you'll need to click on. Press C to find it and delete it. Another thing. Oh dear. I clicked on the wrong cell. Another thing to worry about is yeah, you can't click on NPCs either. And you can select through statics, so I can select this through the static. Oh, here's another thing, just in case nobody notices. But you see these yellow connectors, their thickness depends on the relative incline between the nodes. So when they're perfectly flat, they'll be about the width of an NPC hitbox. But as you increase it, it'll get smaller. So something to keep in mind, because sometimes you'll have an appearance that like these yellow lines, which do show relative, thickness of the nodes, and they are by default about the size of a standard NPC, which not all creatures are that same size, by the way. But when you're going up very steep surfaces, sometimes you'll be confused about why the yellow lines are not lining up. So that's just something to keep in mind. Yeah. So that should be pretty much everything. I was just asked to sort of have an example of how I would pad these sorts of places, and I hope this served the purpose. Yeah. I hope this was helpful. Have a fantastic day.